Or even Dangote, when he wanted to build his refinery, I think energy was a big issue. Infrastructure wasn't there. He had to like outsource so many things because the ability to build and do things in Nigeria is just it's extremely limited.
And I heard he even got a lot of trouble from the government
Yeah,
with a lot of bureaucracy to build this.
yeah. So I would say he's somebody that he's probably going against the wind. Even though he's also been in a way favored by so many government policies. Not just him, like the company, the cement industry, for instance.
So he's been favored by government.
Yeah,
government
I mean,
policy.
there was what we call the backward integration policy that was brought up in the early 2000s, right? The policy was to support cement production in Nigeria, moving Nigeria from an importer of cement to a net exporter of cement. And in fact, Dangote, Lafarge, and some of the other companies played a big role in that space. Many of these companies benefited from that policy. So there were quotas given to companies that were importing cement that, okay, over time, you would have to start investing, setting up plants. Rather than importing, you would start producing locally. And so with government incentives, support, they were able to set up these plants, including Dangote Cement. So they put that together, invested heavily in the industry. And then, so now Nigeria is a net exporter of cement. So you could say that, he benefited from, stable government policies, and which is what we need. So it's been hard to replicate that success. I would call it success, but because again, there's still a challenge with the price of cement. And in fact, one of the things people argue is that, when you implement import substitution policies and protect an industry, right? When that industry grows and becomes, competitive, the next step should be how do you then reduce that
Support.
all of those blockage that you've put to be sure that the industry can compete with exports or exported goods, right? So perhaps maybe that's the reason why prices are still quite high, because some of those protections are still there. And again, for you to open up for exports, one of the things we've found out in some of my research is that you also need to do the groundwork of issues like infrastructure, energy, cost, and all of those other doing business cost in Nigeria. You have to make sure you tackle those issues. Otherwise, there's no way many of our industries will not be competitive with goods coming from say China or South Korea and the likes. So that's the hard work, I'm referring to, that all of these has to be put in place. And to your point on the Dangote Refinery, it's just so sad that what he's going through, right? His company should not be going through that, right? They've invested so much in building the world's largest single train refinery, in Lagos, right now as we speak. But there's still some issues going on with people, particularly with those importing petrol, right? So they want to continue importing petrol. And then he has the refinery that can produce what Nigeria needs. So there's this conflict of, clashes of interest as to, who will feed the market.
But you said he's going against the wind. Why is it that Nigeria's wind is staying exactly how it is?
Well, what I think when I say going against the wind, I mean, for instance, with this refinery that he's built, right? One would have thought that he will be giving all the support that he needs, just like it was done in the cement industry. And it was not just Dangote, it was other companies benefited from, the cement backward integration policy, right? And in fact, Nigeria now exports cement, a net exporter. So cement has been removed from, the import list. That's a huge savings in terms of foreign exchange, but for this refinery, right? So the government came up with a policy that says Naira for crude. So you sell crude is produced in naira in Nigeria, sold in dollars, outside Nigeria. But because of the exchange rate risk, the president announced that crude will be sold to Dangote in naira rather than in dollars. Because if you price it in dollars, it becomes more expensive because the currency is weaker, has depreciated over time. And then it makes the refined product, which is petrol and other products, more expensive because you purchased your crude in dollars. Businesses, you have to recover your cost. Now the president says, okay, because of that, we'll sell crude to you in naira, just so you can at least produce and sell at a much lower price. Just recently, that was stopped. So in fact, the prices of petrol started going up again. So it tells you, sometimes you just wonder, like, the interests that are at play here, the people who just want to keep importing this product just so they can make profit out of it, regardless of whether Nigeria produce petrol and refined product. So those are the interests, and that's where the hard work, or part of the hard work that I mentioned, it has to be done. Otherwise, so if I were the president, I would give Dangote Refinery all of the support it needs, because Nigeria has no business should not be importing petrol when you have a refinery like that working, and the government refineries don't necessarily, work as they should.
So who are the people he's sort of fighting against?
Well, to be honest, I don't know them. Yeah, I mean, perhaps maybe the people importing fuel. I mean, those are the people that come to mind, to be honest. And I don't think there should be an excuse on this. I just think from the top at the presidency level, there has to be some deliberate need to support local businesses and to make sure that you see them succeed and thrive. And I think that has to be the idea behind government policies, that look, whether or not we like him, whether or not we like his business, he's employing millions or thousands of Nigerians. He's helping us, or he will help us to conserve foreign exchange. In fact, export more. Recently, they export some products to Brazil. That's additional foreign exchange that comes in. So in the longer term, I think that's where policies need to shift towards that. How do you then protect the interest of local manufacturers and ensure that, they can grow and thrive? So all of the things of, power supply, infrastructure, skills training, all of those things has to be in place for them to succeed. Access to intermediate input, has to be in place. Otherwise, in the next 10 years, Nigeria will still be exporting crude and then importing petrol or refined products, from other countries. And we've done that for the last 50 years. And we've seen that it's not worked. Not just Nigeria, even all of the African countries, right? And it's so bad that even when you look at the crude itself, the export of the raw material, right? I mean, somebody could argue that it's the same commodity that a country like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the likes, they export these commodities and then they still make money from it. But when you look at the volume and scale over the last 50 years, it's just like we've not even gotten as much as we should from this product. In I think in the 60s or so, we were getting something about $11 billion, from the sale of crude. Fast forward to the year 2000, it increased to about 100, 110, $111 billion, right? 60s to 2000. But when you look at East Asia, in terms of their exports, they were getting about 30 billion, same 60s. In the 2000s, it rose from 30 billion to $2 trillion.
Wow.
So you can imagine moving from 11 billion to 110 billion dollars, and another country moving from 30 to 2 trillion by, producing diverse products and exporting this. And so there's no way that a country like Nigeria or Ghana or the likes will not be vulnerable to crude oil prices or prices of gold and cocoa when they drop, because that's what you are focused on. And you're not even doing it well. You're not even producing the crude well like the Saudis and the Qatars. Look at in 2022 when the war broke out, crude oil price went up significantly across the world, right? If you're an oil exporting country, that's the time you should benefit from it. Nigeria's crude oil production was dropping to almost a million barrels per day, right? Some of it we heard were being stolen by, people, other people and co. And you then wonder if this is even an asset, how come you can't protect it? You can't monitor it. You can't check how much really are you making from it. So it's almost like you're doing a bad thing and you're not even doing it well.